Today is the 11th of April 2017. My name is Andrew Ortiz. I'm interviewing Mr. Jose Colon, who served in the Army for 24 years. Mr. Colon served during World War II and the Korean War under the 65th Infantry Regiment. He earned the Bronze Star Medal and reached the rank of Master Sergeant. I'm interviewing Mr. Colon as part of the University of Central Florida's Community Veterans History Project. This interview is being conducted in Castleberry, Florida. Mr. Colon, where were you born?
Orocovis, Puerto Rico, up on the mountains. And Orocovis, you know what Orocovis is? Orocovis is in the center of the island. If you go to Orocovis, right when you walk out of the church, it's a sign there. That is the center of the island. But that's my hometown.
Did you grow up there?
When I go to Puerto Rico, yes, all the time. I still have family there.
Did you have any brothers or sisters growing up?
I have one sister left. We were 8, five brothers and 3 sisters. I made number 5, and I have only one sister now. She lives in New York.
What did your parents do for a living?
Agriculture. We had a farm, and way back at that time when I was born, we produced everything we needed except salt, sugar, more or less, but everything else we had in the farm.
What was your childhood like?
Because you're born in the country and you don't know anything else. It was great. When I was 7, my aunt had already worked on getting a school in the area, and she did. So I was going to school at 7. They actually, I say 7 years because the children had to walk. And because they had to walk, that's what they said, 7 years old before they could go to school. But I had the school about half a mile, so I had no problems with that.
Did any of your family serve in the military?
My 2 brothers. One served during the Second World War, and he was serving in San Juan Artillery. If you go to San Juan to El Escambron Beach Club, you still can find the remains of whatever they had in there for artillery. And the other brother, he was in the 65th. He went to Europe. I did not.
What kind of education did you have before joining the military?
That's a good one. And I was thinking about that a few minutes ago. At that time, what you learned, it was so good. I was making a comparison with 8th grade with 2 years of high school. And I actually had, when I went to the Army, 2 years high school. I finished at night in San Juan.
What influenced you to join the military?
I had a cousin in the 65th. One Sunday he showed up at home and asked my brother if he wanted to join the 65th because there was a vacancy. At that time, it was by vacancies. And my brother said no. So he asked me how old I was. I said 18. He says, "You want to go?" I said, "Yes." That was it.
How did your family react to you enlisting?
Oh, there were no problems. Because that was, my brothers are working already. One of my sisters was married. And whoever was left was just in the farm as usual. It's one less, but I used to go there every weekend.
Where did you go for basic training?
Ah, that's a good one. I was enlisted only one. So for only one person, I had one sergeant and one PFC who were handling the basic training at Fort San Cristobal. Have you been in San Cristobal? Well, you better go there. Mm-hmm. San Cristobal is divided into it's like a second floor on the ramp in the back. So we used to go there, and that's where I learned how to march and what to do everything there. And I did, and I'm happy that I did with him because I learned so much, including one thing that they had in the 65th is always to be able to give a hand to anybody who needed.
So you trained by yourself?
Actually, almost. It was almost. I had PSC Rivera and the sergeant, and that was every day. But it was more or less. He told me what to do, and then I did it. It was almost self-training.
What was basic training like?
Basic training is at the present time, there's a lot of work. But they happen to be, they have minimum 25 or 30 or more. And in my case, it was only one. So I just did the training basically the way I wanted.
Did you get along with your drill sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Are there any particular moments that stood out during your training?
Yes. Company H was a heavy weapons company. And I learned how to work with the machine gun. But I didn't have the opportunity to fire the machine gun until there's one specific date every year was, so that we were going for, firing the machine gun. And because I was new and I was a recruit, they didn't want me to fire first. They wanted those who knew how to do it to be first, because there was also an increase on the salary of $5 a month. And believe it or not, my salary was $21. So it was only $1, and if you made it good in the machine gun, made expert, then you automatically got an additional $5. So that's why they didn't want the recruits, to fire first. I insisted. And out of 200, I made 128. So I got my promotion. I got 3 days leave, and it passed, and I went home. Because one thing I didn't like from the machine guns was to clean the machine guns, to remove the dirt on the machine gun was a lot of work. So when I get back from home, everything was clear.
Tell me about graduation.
That was at night. That was at night, and actually I couldn't make it because I was doing something else. But I also was going to school to learn how to type and shorthand, and that graduation was good.
When you were going to school to type, was that advanced training?
No, that's something that I wanted to. It was a school in San Juan. It was at night also. And one of those things, I was a driver. I was driving for the company commander already when I was about 6 months in the company. And then I was going to school every night also to learn how to shorthand and typing. And that, when the Antilles Headquarters Department was organized in San Juan, and the company was ready to go to Europe, they had asked for one driver to the 65th. They didn't have anybody else, and they sent me. So when the time came for the company to move, they transferred me to the headquarters. And from there, in about 8 months, I ended driving for the adjutant general. He's a person that didn't talk much to the driver. We just sat there, but we had trips when we were working on the base at the Guadilla. That was what it was later, Ramey Air Force Base. And I used to drive for him. And we did trips, 2.5 hours back. And he never talked much. He only said, "Thank you, driver," and "Thank you, driver." But about the 8th trip, he said, "Thank you, driver. That was a good trip. If there is anything that I can do to you, that I can do for you anytime, let me know." And I didn't lose 1 second. I said, "Sir, I know shorthand, I know typing, and I'm working now, I'm going now for bookkeeping." And he said, "Well, that's great." Next day, at 10 o'clock, I was calling, and I was transferred from driving one car to an office, and that's when I started typing in one of the offices at the headquarters.
And where were you during this time?
I was driving. I was a driver for officers in headquarters
Where was the headquarters?
in San Juan.
San Juan.
That was the original headquarters. That was called the Headquarters District of Puerto Rico. And that's the one that we had been working. And then later, there was the Antilles Command, because they covered all the islands in the Caribbean, including Cuba. Cuba had one base in addition to Montego Bay. They had one base in Cuba that was handled by the U.S. Army, because it was U.S. Army and Army Air Corps. So we had both.
So after you became a driver, what was your title?
Driver.
Well, after that.
After that, I started as a clerk, and I was there for about almost a year. And that's when I got some promotions, because first as a driver, I was still private. But the minute I got into the office, and I still have some certificates, sorry that I can get them for you, that I get what they had, and I believe they still have them, is what they call the specialties. So you could be a private or private first class specialist, 5 or 4 or 3. Number 2 was equivalent to a sergeant first class. So I was already private first class, specialist second class, when I was transferred to Lossy Field as a sergeant. When I got there, what they did was give me the grade of sergeant first class, because I was the money was equivalent, and then I became the sergeant major of the base, and that was on October 30, 1943. That was the date of the birth of my daughter. Exactly the same day that she was born, I was transferred.
So in 1943, what was your rank?
1943 was private first class, specialist second class. And then when I got transferred, what they did was promote me to sergeant first class. I was equivalent in money and pay.
Were you still a clerk as sergeant first class, or did you have another duty?
Sergeant first class. I was a sergeant major in Lossy Field. Now, when we say sergeant major of a base or sergeant major of the 65th, and there's impression that the sergeant major, what he does is paperwork. The sergeant major and the commanding officer work together for the benefit of the troops. In other words, I'm not working, if you happen to be the sergeant major, I'm not working for, if you happen to be the commanding officer, I'm not working for the commanding officer. I am working with the commanding officer for the benefit of the troops. Now, Lossy Field, that's what it was called, post. That's a command, a base, and we were responsible for the base. It's like a city. And when I got to Korea, I was not assigned to the 65th. I was assigned to the 7th as the personnel sergeant major, but in about 3 weeks I was transferred to the 65th. I was in the position of sergeant major, and it's the same work. I work with the commanding officer. Commanding officers get up in the morning and go to the firing line. The person in charge is the sergeant major.
So how long were you in charge of Lossy Field?
In Lossy Field I was until 1945. The day that my son was born, I was transferred. I don't know why that. I was transferred to the Pacific. And I went as far as Mineral Wells in Texas, on Fort Camp Walters. Now is a park, but before was an army base, and that was huge. So I was there. I had with me about 100. I was in charge, and we were held there for a while. We were supposed to be waiting for transportation, but I guess transportation was available. And I believe we had been held because they're thinking already of the atomic bomb. When President Truman dropped the bomb, I was returned to Puerto Rico. There was no need for. So 3 of us were regular army, returned to Puerto Rico. The others went to Pacific, and then was also assigned to another army base. The assignment was to Jamaica Base Command. So we had the Army Air Corps. I had been in Lucyfield. There was an Army Air Corps base, and we closed the air base. Everything of the Air Corps was transferred to Aguadilla, to the other base. And then when I returned from the States, from Mineral Wells, that's what it was, I was assigned to Jamaica Base Command. And Jamaica had also an Army base and an Army Air Corps base. There are 2 commands. That we closed them. In 1946, we closed both. That's when the Second World War was over, and what they did was just when they divided the army from the Army Air Corps, and the Army Air Corps was called the Air Force. That was in 1946. That's the second air base that had to close the 2 bases. Returned to San Juan, and I was assigned to the vault. You know what the vault is? It's a vault like a bank, and that's where they keep all the classified information. So I was there. It's like a bank. You just walk into the vault, and everything is locked in the vault, in the vault. And if anybody needs information, especially officers, you just give them the file, and you stand there until you finish reading. But you cannot make any notes, or you couldn't do anything, and then put it back. That was my job until about over a year. I was reassigned to the Office of the Army Reserves, U.S. Army Reserves. And that's when the Second World War, they had to reduce once the war is over. So there's a lot of people they're going to be sending home. And what are we going to do with them? So the idea was to re-enlist whoever wants to come back in the reserves. And that was my job for about 3 years. When the Korean War started, that was on the 24th of June 1950. I was at home. I guess it was a Sunday. And I received a phone call from my boss. And he said, "Get ready, I'll pick you up." So we called 1,400 in 1 week. That was the personnel that was used for the 65th Infantry Regiment, for the 3rd Battalion. And I stayed there. I was attached, the 65th took off for Korea, and then I was attached to the 65th. You've been in the armed forces? No? Okay. Attached to the 65th. The 65th is on the way to Korea, and I happen to be attached, but I stay in Puerto Rico because I'm recruiting. So the regiment is in Korea, and 3 of our main office, we happen to be attached to the 65th. So we're working for the 65th, but we're working in Puerto Rico. And I work as a recruiter, and I'm going to show you one of the orders that I have. I still have one. Going to the different towns in Puerto Rico, you know. So I was there until finally I was transferred to Korea, and I was supposed to be assigned to the 65th, and that's one of the problems that were with the 65th in Korea. I have noticed that after the 65th had the problem with the court martials, there have been comments about allegations of not assigning the people, the Spanish speaking who could speak English, to the 65th. But they do it in a way that it looks like somebody in the 65th did let you know that was happening, when the reality was that they were doing it. And I have an order. When I got to Korea, I was not assigned to the 65th. Neither the group that were with me. We were assigned to the 7th. So that allegation that the 65th were, I mean, the replacements were not assigned to the 65th is true. It is true. I was reassigned to the 65th, but I believe I was the only one out of the 100, more or less 100 that went with me. So there's so many things that happen to be considered when we talk about the 65th, but it's so much. So I did arrive at the 65th, assumed the position of Sergeant Major. There's so many things that were in the paper about rice and beans and the mustache and a lot of things, you know. I was present because you do have a mustache. I'm going to tell you. I was present the day that the commanding officer was talking to the adjutant about the mustache, because we're there. We were in a tent. Five of us. The adjutant, the assistant adjutant, myself, clerk typist, a sergeant that's handling the casualties, a And a file clerk, I have how many? 6 maybe. So I've been listening there. I'm facing there. Behind me is the adjutant facing the other way. The commanding officer comes here and he's talking about the mustache. And the adjutant says, I'm gonna shave my mustache. He says, you don't have to shave your mustache. You trim your mustache. That's the orders. You know what? If you read whatever is being written about the mustache, it's entirely different. What is being said. The reality was, if you have a mustache that is aquí grande, and you happen to be up in the fighting line, and you are up there, and you happen to be there 6 weeks without a bath, eating whatever you can find, don't you believe that the bugs are going to get in the mustache? When you drink the coffee with milk, there's a little bit always in the hair. That was the key for it. Hygiene. Just trim it and then let it go and let it grow again, but for a particular purpose. So if anybody mentions a mustache, you tell them that was the key for it. There's no problem with it. The adjutant, he had it like you. There's no sense. No, that's okay. Leave it there. It's the other one, like Geraldo, and they had people. They had soldiers at the front lines. One of those were on the cafecito, and he told me that he was six weeks that he couldn't get a bath. The same clothing, the same shoes, the same socks. 6 weeks. And you happen to be up there in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. People cannot imagine how it is. And in the 65th, that happened. But also happened let me see how I'm going to put it. I was in Puerto Rico, and part of the 295th Infantry Regiment was going to be called into active duty to supposedly replacement for the 65th. The commanding officer of the 295th was not called to active duty, but he was working with the governor. At the same time, General Marshall, remember Marshall, the one that was in Europe, and he came up with the administration, whatever, to help all the countries in Europe. He was in Puerto Rico because he was the Secretary of State. And with him was General Collins, that was the Chief of Staff of the Army. And this officer went to the governor and talked to him and says, I like to be with my boys. So it was simple. Tell Marshall told Collins, and Collins called him up and sent him to Korea. That was Coronel Cordero Davila. Cordero Davila before he left, I was in the reserves and we have so close. And one day we met him. I say, Colonel, you're going to Korea. And he said, this first step to the governorship, I never forget that. It's the first time you hear this? The first step to the governorship. He had in his mind, I'm going to go to Korea, I'm going to be the ha he ho ho. And then, when he finished as a governor, I'm going to be the governor. And he got to Korea, immediately he got the Silver Star. But what happened? If you have heard about Kelly Hill, you have heard about Kelly Hill, okay. Kelly Hill, can I go back to Colonel Harris?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to Colonel Harris. Colonel Harris was the commanding officer of the 65th Infantry in Puerto Rico when the 65th was ordered to Korea. That was Colonel Harris. Harris liked rum with Coca-Cola. And that's what he ordered whenever he went to the bar. And you know what? He said that the Borinqueniers were called rum and Coca-Cola. That's not true. That's not true. So he got to Korea, and because the 65th was a full-fledged unit with all the units like medical service company, mortar, tank, all those together were part of the 65th. He started in the south, and he was pushing fast towards the north because he was fighting with what? He was fighting with the Koreans and South Koreans. And many of the South Koreans are North. They just change their clothing and they just stay in South Korea. They're not. Until finally he went so fast that he went all the way up to the 38th parallel. I have a book. Let me see. This one is the only book that tells the truth. This one is in Spanish. And this fellow here went on the first group to Korea. And Orocovi, when that now is a park, but that was part of the town. And this book, he tells the truth. He tells exactly what happened. So they went all the way up to the 38th parallel, and they were supposed to go across. And that's when the Chinese joined the Koreans. And that's when the Borinqueniers, not having ammunition, fixed bayonet. Because the Koreans didn't have ammunition either. I mean, the Chinese, what they did, swim across the river, to the other side. That's when this thing with MacArthur and the president. But MacArthur was right. He never had anybody like the Borinqaniers. He told the truth. He said, I wish I have had people like that during my life. So, if you go back to the 65th there, up at because the 65th was the one that was holding the Chinese for the Marines to get out. Everybody got out. And the Borinqaniers were. I mean, the ones that pushed the Chinese across the river. And then, of course, but they continue, and that's where they stay, because they didn't go to the south or to the north. They just stay there and continue to be there. I don't have much respect for Coronel Harris. This one is a book. It's in Spanish. How's your Spanish? ¿Cómo sí, cómo está? How about you? No? Nothing? Wow. So I went to Korea. I mean, let's go back to Cordero Davila. What happens with Cordero Davila? Cordero Davila is pushing to the limit. There was one letter that Cordero Davila sent to the general. Have you seen it? Okay. The movie, that lady from New York, how you call it? Whatever, I'll tell you in a few minutes. That letter from Cordero Davila, she has a copy. I mean, it is on the on the paper from joined to the situation of the movie. And he pushed the Borinqaniers to limit. To the limit is to the limit. When you have your shoes, the boots, wet, and you have 3 pairs of socks, wet, and you're feeling that you have a fever, and you have to continue. That's beyond whatever you can think about the military. He was pushing. Finally, that group said, okay, we are not going to go forward anymore. And they didn't. So that's when came the court-martials. Cordero Davila was relieved from his command, relieved from active duty, and sent back home. And the general, because the general was convinced, he was also relieved from his command and sent home. And then the Borinqaniers court-martial. I was in Puerto Rico visiting my niece, and she had to go to the hospital, and being at the hospital, she fell and she had to stay. So I went over and stayed with her. And there was an attorney next to her. They were talking, and I got the place next to them. And I don't know how the 65th came up. And I asked her about the court martials. I said, if you had been the attorney for those boys. She said, if I had been the attorney, I'll sit on the floor and I wouldn't move until they get the general and the colonel back as witnesses. They were not as witnesses. Did you know? No. During the court martials? No. I don't know. Maybe they had a sworn statement or something, but they were not. None of the two. That it wasn't too good for the 65th, and that's when there was one officer that was the executive officer for 1st Other Battalion, 102. He was the son of General Eisenhower. Have you read about that? No? Eisenhower had already been selected to be president, but his son was in the 65th. He was the executive officer for one of the battalions, and he was with the general was asking him for information, and he had him like how you call it, and he was informing the general of every little thing that happened in the battalion or in the 65th. General Smythe. That was in September, Cordero was sent to Puerto Rico. October, De Gavre was assigned to the 65th. November, Jose Colon was assigned as Sergeant Major. November. In November, Eisenhower became president. And his son, that was the one, giving the information, looking for information for the general, was promoted to lieutenant colonel and assigned to the G3 position in division. G3 position is operations. We're talking about January, February. In March, we received the news of the integration. In April, there were the trucks going out full and coming back full. All the Spanish-speaking were moved out. The regiment had about 3,000 out and 3,000 in English-speaking one of the few that was kept was me. I was kept as sergeant major until November. May training, June. They were up on the front lines. That's what Lieutenant Cavazos. I believe you have heard of General Cavazos. And that's this is the day before the signature of the armistice. I was quiet, no artillery, no nothing. The 27th, the armistice was signed. Quiet until 5 o'clock p.m. 5 o'clock p.m. Somebody from our artillery fired one shot. This was completely destroyed. And this was the headquarters of the 65th. Down here someplace was the medics, and they had the first rounds, artillery. There are some who were injured. The doctors were working on them. One round came direct to the doctor's tent. Nobody says anything because nobody was there. I mean, Puerto Ricans were not there, but it was like hell. I was there. Senor, anything else?
So after the armistice was signed, there were still people dying and artillery shells going off.
No. That was the day that it was signed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The day that it was signed, one officer, American officer, fired one shot.
Okay.
Okay. And then there was, because the armistice was signed to be effective at 11 o'clock a.m. But they had until 11 o'clock p.m. to suspend the firing. But there was nothing. There was silence. It was at 5 o'clock on the 27th, after they sent it. I heard one. The Chinese, they really, on the other side of the hill. So this was totally destroyed. You could hear the 27th in the morning. We had a Korean that did a lot of things for us. He knew English and interpreted. And I asked him if he could dig a hole. And people started joking about it and says, well, he dug a hole that we had about 2. We were 4. And we don't play there until everything was over. And this, see this building here? That's a kitchen. That kitchen, there was one round. So you can imagine the cooks and people that happened to be eating there. They were That was the last day of the battle.
Where was that located?
This was in Kumwa. Kumwa. That was the last. And we were there for a while, and then we for a short while, we were returned to the original place at the 65th. Usually, how you call it? When the 65th went for a break, we moved to the same place. There was one engineer, Borinquenier, that came up with the idea of showers. When I went there, I became sergeant major. I asked him. He says, well, nobody asked. He says, well, nobody asked. I mean, we need, yeah, but we can go to the river. No. We want showers. And he designed, he found the materials. He designed, it was 3 or 4 pipes. Hook up with one pipe here. And this pipe was hooked up to a pump on a truck. But these pipes had holes under. So there's a truck with a hose into the river. It's a pump inside the truck and a heater. So they pump the water through that pump, through the heater, into the showers. That was permanent, you know. It's the minute they start the pump, and there was water for the showers there for a while. But before I get there wasn't. If you wanted, you go to the river. There's so many things. Rats and snakes. Did you hear about the rats? No? Okay. That's when the sergeant major rides seniority. We don't talk about all those things because you happen to be talking about the Chinese and how many got hurt but in Korea, with all the respect to the lady, you know what they use for fertilizer? Okay. In Korea, they use the human fertilizer. They take it all, put the latrine, and when it's full, all they had to do is remove that, wooden, and put it some other place. And then that one there, put water, shake it, and then start on the farms. But you know how many years, I guess, years and years and years, hundreds of years, I guess, they've been doing the same. So that's where we happen to be standing or sitting. the rats, that's a good place. But the rat has a bug that has the, whatever you call it, that gets to your veins. They do not live with the blood. They live with the vein. They start destroying the vein, and then the blood starts coming out. They call it hemorrhagic fever. That was in Korea. And when somebody showed up to my office and said, oh, I feel a little bit, I said, hey, MASH. There was a lieutenant one day, and he said, Jose, you're just a sergeant, I'm a lieutenant. I said, you're a lieutenant, and you know what? You're gonna do whatever I say. You're gonna jump in that jeep, and the driver is gonna take you to MASH, and you don't drink any more water. And the driver took him, MASH, and disappeared. About 10 years later, I found that man in San Juan. One day, he's walking, I'm working, we just come up. He says, you know what, I'll give you a hug because you saved my life. The first thing that MASH did was cut off the liquids. No more fluids. For 3-4 days, you happen to be there and you cannot have water, you cannot have anything until that vein repairs, because they usually, the repairs by themselves. Those things we had in Korea, people don't say a word. The rats. But my office, I guess when I tell you about my office, what do you think? A nice place with a good chair, right? A tent on the ground. You're gonna put a floor because the snakes come under. And you cannot put a floor because you cannot move that floor all the time. And we had to move sometimes twice a week. You move. So we cannot kill a rat. You see the rat, how are you? Don't do it. And snakes. All those things get a Borinquen in Korea, up in the mountains, with those things, with not too many things to eat. In fact, there is there for the Kelly Hill, all they had was sea rations. Okay, you see, sea ration is okay, but you're going to eat sea ration 3 times a day for a month? Can be. I have one picture that I took on the 1st of January 1953. It's Father Bacon using the hood of a jeep as the altar. And you have about 100 Borinqueniers kneeling in the snow. That picture I gave it to someone, and that someone didn't want to publish it. It's not being Catholic, it's not being whatever. It's just to see 100 Borinqueniers talking to God or whatever, or just they're going to be there. Their last mass is going to be that one. And then somebody says, well, you cannot publish it. I have the pictures. I have originals. I have two. The 1st of January 1953, Choron Valley. Choron Valley. It was the Death Valley. Death Valley. Little things. For for Christmas, the warrant officer from the tank company gave me a call. He says, come over. We're going to have something to eat here. So I did with Sergeant Rivera and the driver. He had a tent. Anybody could see the tent. The enemy, anybody. He was there. And he was there with the first sergeant and the company clerk. They had the mayor from San Juan, Doña Fela, you have that name? Felicita Rincon. She used to send truckloads of things, canned stuff. And that day we had chicken. So Reto, who's the warrant officer, about 12, he was gonna talk to us, And he started talking. But the first thing is a family who happens to be on the other side of the world. And there we are, in the middle of nowhere, with a lantern there. If anybody wants to fire, okay, fire. For that particular night. And when he started talking about the family, well, a tear here and there. But it was the 65th. So if you're going to talk about the 65th, you take months. And you talk about the 65th continuously. Because the little things that make the big things. Am I right, sir?
How long were you in Korea for?
In Korea, I was 410 days.
After the armistice was signed, what was your assignment or duty?
You're not going to believe it. I arrived in San Juan on the 22nd of December at night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, at Fort Buchanan. Fort Buchanan had the organization that was taking care of all those who came in and giving transportation or whatever. So there is Sergeant whatever, Machado, I guess, on top of that, and he was giving instructions. Take it easy. You're going to get orders, and when you get the orders, buses are going to be leaving here. And it's going to be leaving, they're going to stop in your hometown. And then he said, Jose Colon, and that's me. Front and center. I went there. He said, you can You can go. I said, what do you mean I can go? I live in Bayamon, I work here. He says, if you want to do that, it's okay by me, but you have to come back here. Now, if you wait for about an hour, then you go to the quarter, you get rid of the uniforms, and everything else. Go to with the quartermaster. You don't have to. And I said, why? He says, because you have an assignment already. Of all those people there, one had an assignment. It was me. So I waited until about 5 o'clock in the morning. Rivera was there. He happened to be working with me in Korea. He said, come on, I know the fellow there, the quartermaster. So we went there. He was arriving, opened the door, and he took me home. I was 1 week visiting family, and I decided to go to headquarters to find out exactly the same desk that I had left.
How long were you there for?
I was there for a while. I have done a lot of things in the army, I had another mini assignment, and then I was told that I was going to be going to Vietnam. No, Vietnam, I guess. The one next to Korea, whatever they call it. I said, not me. I had 24 years of service. No, I had 20. I had 20 years of service. And I'm not going home. I've retired. You know what's the situation? What's the problem? I have been in the army since I was 18. 20 years later, 21, I am facing off retirement, and what am I going to do? I don't know anybody. I don't know anything other thing than, well, army was management. Well, I said, So I went back to San Juan, and I was at the hospital waiting for the physical exam. And across me, like you here, is a lieutenant colonel. And he looked at me, he said, I know you. I said, yes, sir. When you came to Puerto Rico, the very first night, I was on duty at headquarters. You show up and you're looking for transportation to the airport. And he said, and you gave me the transportation? I said, yes, sir. I work until 7. 7, the airport is on the way because I was going home. So I dropped you at the airport. So I told him the mini story, He said, no, you're not going to retire. He said, I am G1. You know what that is? Okay. The organization of the army. And this organization is from the department all the way down. So the command, like the in Puerto Rico, they have the commanding general, And they have what they call G1, G2, G3, G4, G5. G1 is personnel, G2 intelligence, G3 operations, G4 supplies, G5 what you're doing. And it was all the way up. And I have to take a little bit of water. And if you want water, I have so he was G1 personnel. He says, no, you're not gonna, And he says, when you finish, go to see me. But when I finished, I went over. I had been in headquarters, half of my life. And I told him what was the situation. He says, no. He called the provost marshal. And he said, I have a qualified person in here and I need a space for him. I said, I don't have a space. So he went over to meet me. He says, I don't have the space. But we had what was called the waiver. The waiver was if you happen to have 20 years of service, you cannot be considered to go overseas because you have time already to retire. So he said, you have so-and-so who qualifies for that. I gave you that so-and-so, how you call it, extra, and you take Jose. I says, okay. So I went to work on a project, a finance office project. Finance. I was in headquarters company attached to the military police to work with finance. Good experience. They had they were having problems with the allotments. They're having problems with the allotments. If you're in the military and you have a father and mother that you like to help, or you can have some funds for those persons. But there were too many people playing that, they didn't even in the army. So I was working on that. I was getting cases that went out to the island to work. One particular one. When I got to Korea, there was a truck every month that came over to my office with those who were returning back home. And all I had to do was make sure, check the records and send them. One of them, one sergeant, he got out and he said, my dad is gonna have surgery. One of his legs. Could I, he says, in a week. He said, do you believe I could get home? Korea is not that simple. But I have the sergeant major in division. He gave him a call. He said, send him up here. So he got home. And I didn't hear out of a person anymore for years. So that day I happened to go to check that, that case for finance. It's up in the mountains in Cialis. And there's a little girl at the entrance. I asked her, and she said that he is my grandpa. He's in bed. Can I see him? Yes. I go in and I introduce myself. I'm in civilian clothes. I said, I'm Colon. And he stopped right there. He says, I knew it. I knew that you were gonna come over to see me. You sent my son from Korea. Okay, what do you think? That man, how that happened, don't ask me. And then he showed me, he said, there he is, the picture. About 3 years later. What else you want about a Borinquen here? We could be talking for hours and hours and hours and hours. And after integration, integration, get a truckload, take off, and a truckload comes in. If you're the company commander of a company, and you had 100 people, and then they ask you for 5, what you gonna do? Are you gonna send the best 5 that you have? No. You're gonna send the 5 that you prefer not to have them. But that's what we get on the 65th. $4,000. They're supposed to be 80%, 80 to 20. It was not. It was 90 to 10. So there was no integration. Then 100%, I mean a 10% Spanish speaking, and 80 plus because we have to deduct the officers, and the officers were English speaking. So it was not a integration. And there's so many stories. I mean, I was reading the autobiography of Eisenhower. And Eisenhower was one that was there helping the general. But his father, a 5-star general, was not going to take anything, about court martials and whatever on the 65th. He was going to stop it. And the only way to stop it is the other way. Get him out. Get him out, and then we talk about integration and segregation and everything else. And
segregation continues. There's no question about it.
What
The-
year was that?
Hmm?
What year was that?
Year 1953. Eisenhower became the president on January 20. His son was already the G3 of the division. And by February, we got the news about the integration. So it was a matter of when you don't. I told the adjutant, I was joking, I says, well, you know what, I'm ready to go. He said, you know what, you're not going any place, you're gonna stay here. But I had a job and I did my job regardless of, but you could see how it was. I got that the 5 I received to replace the others. One was an attorney. He finished college, he's called by Selective Service, and he ended in the 65th. He didn't know anything about anything, but he knew law. So we had the how you call it, the whatever, it's a book that covers the military law. I gave it to him. That says, you're going to read this as many times as you can. And whenever I get a commercial, I'm going to give it to you. And you're going to process it, and you're going to take it all the way to the officer, and that's what you're going to be doing. Because he didn't know anything else. There was another one who had been a counselor at Walter Reed Hospital. And they sent them to an infantry battalion, infantry regiment. What are you going to do with them? So the few that I got, not too many, could work, But I figure what the hell.
Going back, you mentioned you were into financing.
Uh-huh.
Did you continue the rest of your service?
No. I was there for let me see. After that, I went back to headquarters. Back to headquarters to officers division.
What did you do there?
Is you process everything has to do with officers since I was recruiting and let me see if I can find one of the others. Okay? One thing. This is the order. It's a special order from 167 from the division. which assigns, this is my group, which assigns almost all of them to the 7th. And there is one thing that I hate, but anyway, it's there. How the Army was at that time. Okay. And it says, well, you can read it from there. What they given in here is, for example, this is MOS. Okay. In the military, you do have what they call the MOS, military operation specialty, or military something. It's what you do. If you happen to be in, like I was a sergeant major, I had a number 502. 502 was a sergeant major. Whatever you get it, 502 was a sergeant major. And then you have all those in here. But there's one thing here. There is one thing here that also I don't like. It says, following enlisted men, unless otherwise indicated, MOS 1745, unless otherwise indicated, Caucasian, unless otherwise indicated, 7 years unless otherwise indicated, and they continue, and they include race. There is one here. In other words, it's Caucasian unless otherwise indicated. Well, there is one in here indicated. See it? So that's the way the Army was at that time. Not only the Army, the armed forces, but the United States. Now we raise, well, but at that time they had everything. Everything and everyone. That I don't like it. Anyway, this is, remember when we're talking about Colonel Harris, how much I love him. If you look at Colonel Harris' book, he says that 1,400 were called to active duty. That 400 were selective service, and that he could have called 50,000 in 1 week if he was working on it. Here the general sent a letter to Jose Colon, to my boss, and the boss to me, saying thank you for calling 1,400 to active duty. See what happens when people start writing books. In order to what? Give themselves a little bit of importance, they mess up the rest of the history. Because history is history. But you have another book I have there. the books that have been written, person from the 65th, they only talk about themselves, and they may have a page, 2 or 3 pages on the 65th. And you can, except this one that I show you. That fellow has about is one chapter. It's about 5 pages of the Korean War, how he got there and everything else. But this is part of it, and this is the order. When I got to Korea, I was assigned to the 7th. I may have what is that? That's me. That's my Chevy, that's my wife. She passed away 24. And that's me. You don't like those pictures, don't show it to anybody. That's my sister, that's my daughter. This is in Korea. When you get to Korea, just go to the replacement company, they call it. And we were there for about 2 days. 2 days I went to division because I was assigned to the 7th, but I was assigned to division. I was looking for them.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but we will reschedule another interview with you.
Okay.
On behalf of the UCF community and myself, I would like to thank you and your time and your service, Mr. Colon. We will be in touch with a copy of the interview when it's ready.
I like that.